I think I got into cybersecurity, as many people do, not with the original intention to be in the cybersecurity arena. My undergraduate degree is actually in accounting and law, and I started my career as a CPA working for what was then Ernst and Winnie. And although I had a degree in accounting, I never really enjoyed doing it, and I quit thinking I was going to go to law school and become maybe a tax attorney. And when I was doing some interviews with executive search firms, one of them actually made me an offer to be an executive recruiter. And I thought, well, while I'm studying for my LSATs, I could do this recruiting job in the meantime. Turned out I really did like recruiting. And long story, very short, is after about a year and a half of them at 25 years old, I quit and started my own executive search firm called Alta Associates. Well, Alta grew to be really an outstanding cybersecurity search firm. And the reason why that happened was in 1994, the Russians hacked into Citigroup. They hired a gentleman named Steve Katz to be the first ever chief information security officer. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I need to build a data security department." And I said, "Well, what the heck is that?" So really, from the time cybersecurity became a standalone career, I started placing chief information security officers and building the teams that support them. Probably about 10 years after that or more, I'd say in the late 1990s, I was having drinks with Steve once again. And I said, there's a lot of women in cybersecurity. And he said, "I don't think so." And I literally started just writing their names down on a napkin and said, "What would you think if I put together a cocktail party in Manhattan for these remarkable women that I know?" Because I knew all of the women in cyber, at risk and privacy, but I knew that they didn't know each other. And he thought that was a good idea. Well, what started in my mind as a cocktail party ended up being about 125 women in Sanibel Island, Florida, for the first ever Executive Women's Forum. Fast forward to today, 23 plus years later, we are the most powerful organization that is still fiercely dedicated to advancing, developing, and retaining women leaders, specifically in cybersecurity, risk management, privacy, and kind of the emerging technology fields. We have over 100 companies that have engaged with us who are our corporate benefactors, and we still host that annual conference. This year it's October 15th through the 17th. And it will be at the Gaylord Resort in Denver, Colorado. And we'll gather over 700 of the most remarkable and really prestigious and dynamic women in those fields together during that time. So if you're watching and you want to register to come to the conference, you can go to EWF-USA.com and check out the conference. And it's been quite the journey, an unexpected one. But we've done great things. And not only do we do great things for women, but we've had, like this year, over 60 events that engage both men and women leaders in those fields. And we launched a leadership academy 2 years ago. And we're offering those leadership courses both to men and leaders in corporations. So pretty exciting stuff. And really give me an opportunity to get to know a community that is truly a wonderful community. I don't know, Dani, I know you're new to cyber in a way, but it's a community of people that are incredibly generous with their time and with their knowledge. So it's a great place to be if you're just starting off in STEM. Cybersecurity is an awesome career route.
Absolutely. And I can attest to how EWF has really lifted me up. I'm so grateful to be the INI EWF Fellow. I feel I've learned so much, as well as being enrolled in the mentorship program. I've really flourished under Raina, and she's guided me so much, as well as all of the other women like you, Tylisa, and so many others like Sarah as well. Just
Yeah, I
amazing.
mean, community is everything. I know you had said you wanted to ask me a question about kind of, maybe my younger self, what would I think about or things like that. And I think being a part of a community as early as you can is incredibly important, because what happens is, when you're early in your career, making those contacts within your own company might be hard, or if you're not even in a company yet, you're trying to figure those things out. But if you join an organization like the Executive Women's Forum or some other association that might be specific to your particular technical competency, don't just join to check a box. Join and become an active member. We find that women that are part of the EWF, some of them have been members for 20 years. And that's because, at different times of your life, you need different people, you need different advice. So you may come into the EWF as a young woman that's early in her career, and you may find great mentors. You may find other women that are, that are your peers and that can share their struggles and their challenges and how they've overcome things, people that you're very comfortable talking to. But you'll also have an opportunity, like you mentioned, to be a part of LIFT, which is our mentorship program, and to really gain the insights of women that have kind of been there, done that before. And as you progress through your career, as you progress through the different roles or different responsibilities, you're going to find that you need different advice. You need a whole village, right, of people. And the EWF is this amazing tribe of women, right? It's this sisterhood that we've created, that is willing to help you, whether you need somebody to review a PowerPoint slide because you're an executive, but this is the first time you're presenting to the board, or whether you're new to a manager's role and you're thinking about, now how do I go from being a single contributor to now managing a team, or then I'm a manager of a team, but now I'm a manager of managers, right? So you need different help along the way and all of those different career paths.
And I really like how you touched upon how EWF is like a village, and that is such a good way of putting it. You really need a tribe that can cultivate your vibe. What best practices have you cultivated, Joyce, that have been essential in overcoming professional challenges?
Yeah, I think, first of all, my greatest accomplishment is actually creating that community and then really engaging the community. And when you talk about best practices, some of that involves in being able to take risks, right? I know sometimes it's awkward, especially for those people that are more introverted than me, to make an introduction, to brag about yourself in an email. When I say brag, I mean in a nice way. I think women often are willing to give everybody else credit for their work, or to say, oh, it was nothing. No, it is something. And it wasn't just luck that you got where you are, right? It's hard work, it's dedication, it's intelligence. Have the confidence to say that. And if it doesn't come naturally, then you have to do it a little at a time. So I think the best practices that I've learned are around being willing to take risks. And I'm not just talking about the big risks, the little day-to-day risks. Let yourself be in an uncomfortable situation. Don't be afraid to try something new. Even if you fail, you still learn something from that failure, right? And you'll have met people, you maybe have figured out something that you don't like to do, and I think that concept of strengthening that muscle of not being fearful as the first response, but rather, developing your confidence, not being afraid to fail, taking a risk, speaking up and advocating for yourself. Those are the things that I think that I've cultivated, and I think you do that, quite frankly, the easiest when you follow what you're passionate about, right? I am incredibly passionate about advocating for women, for women's leadership, for women's rights. So it becomes second nature to me to work very hard, to be very authentic in my communications. And I think people recognize that and they appreciate it. So I think the more true that you are to yourself, and I think sometimes earlier in your career, you tend to armor up and protect yourself or be worried about saying the right things. Know your stuff. If you know your stuff, go ahead and present it. Use your voice. You now, with everything that's going on in the world, all we have as women is each other, right? So we have to support each other. We have to raise our voices, and we have to really be advocates for ourselves and for those women that surround us.
And I think this kind of goes along with the EWF Brave campaign, how we really have to take risk, no matter what it is. If it's speaking up at a board meeting or just advocating for yourself, Failure shouldn't be viewed negatively, like you said, Joyce. It should be viewed in terms of a positive lens. It's really about changing your perspective instead of thinking about it, I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or I could have done this better. It should be, what did I learn from that, and how can I improve upon that?
Yeah, I had a conversation the other day with a young woman who is still in college. And when I was talking to her about her goals, so many times in the conversation, she injected, I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. And I said, well, tell me about something that you did recently that you were afraid of, but it turned out okay. And she was working a job as well as going to school. And she said, well, I was offered this manager's role and I was really afraid to take it. But I did. And it turns out the manager's role is actually in some ways easier than the role I had. And I enjoy it. And I'm like, okay. So, remember that you can try something and sometimes it turns out to be a lot easier than you thought it was going to be. I think that even if it wasn't, even if you hated that job and you did it for whatever period of time, you can look for a new job and now say you've had manager's experience, right? Or you could know what pieces of that job you liked, but what pieces of that job you hated. And then when you look for your next manager's role, you can focus on those that would really emphasize the pieces that you like. So even if you failed, even if you hated that job, you still learned something from it. You still grew from it and you still could apply those learnings moving forward. So I think you have to reframe failure or reframe taking a risk or reframe being afraid. Look, it's a natural reaction to be afraid, right? I mean, that's why we're human beings are still in existence because we have that fight or flight instinct built into us. It's up to us to overcome that. And the only way that you can continually overcome that fear is by doing it once and doing it again and doing it again. And just like anything else, whether it's playing the piano or riding a bike or taking tests at school, you get better because you learn and you get desensitized to that fear and your confidence grows.
Right, so it's really just about learning the ropes and learning what you can do better next time. What advice would you offer young women considering a career in STEM, particularly in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think sometimes, people are fearful of cyber because they have a very narrow view. They picture somebody hacking into a computer with a hoodie, drinking joke cola in a dark room somewhere. They just think of this, ethical hacker when they think of cyber. Well, I've made a career out of cyber and I have zero technology degrees at all. So you could be, deep into generative AI and you could be deep into the most emerging technologies and quantum computing and you could be in cyber, right? You could be a data analytics or data scientist person and you can have a tremendous path forward in cyber and be continue within that STEM career. But you could also, if you're passionate about marketing or sales or communications or project management or organizational behavior or things that are not typically, heavy into the mathematics or the programming, there's still amazing opportunities within cybersecurity in governance and risk and compliance and privacy and training and awareness. And there's a million things that you could do. Some of them are incredibly technical and have a very technical track forward, and others aren't. Either way, as you advance through the ranks, most people are going to have to need a combination of both technical skills and business acumen. And I know that's something that your school does very well, right? They have a very holistic approach when you get your degree. It's not just all technology. They help you to understand the business reasons because as you progress and you're starting to present to whether it's regulators or stakeholders or the board or some executive committees, they want to know from the technology person, but what does that mean to me? How does it affect the business? How does it affect our strategy? How does it align to our goals? So it's really important, that you think of things in those contexts, if not initially, then eventually. But the sooner that you can start marrying the business knowledge with the technology skills, quite frankly, the more opportunities you'll have for growth in the future.
I do like how you touched upon there's so many different facets to cybersecurity. Often, more often than not, I think people believe that cybersecurity is just all about hacking and not necessarily about business acumen or the bigger picture, but there's social media, governance, law, so many different areas tied to it that we often forget. And it's also important not just to have the technical skills, but like you said, the business acumen, as well as really being able to work well in a team.
Right. And, communication skills are key. At the Executive Women's Forum, we launched a course called Leading with Conversational Intelligence. And it's all about the neuroscience of the brain. And, the fact that if you change the conversation, you can change your outcomes, right? So when we're talking right now, am I making your cortisol spew and making you want to kind of push away from me? Or is your oxytocin kind of, coming out and you're happy and you're going to engage with me? The whole leading with conversational intelligence class is really helps executives, especially those that are technical. I tease some of the people that take the class and say, conversational intelligence is like an oxymoron. Like some of the highly technical folks would rather not have a conversation at all. And that doesn't serve you well. It doesn't serve the company well. So learning how to communicate in a meaningful way, being a better listener, those are the kinds of things that may seem to some people like, oh, do I really need to do that? And the answer is yes. Even if you want to be on a technical track, if your sights are set of eventually being a manager or a senior manager or an executive, communications is incredibly important.
It's not just about having IQ, it's about having EQ as well, Joyce, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, moving forward, in your experience, what challenges do women face in STEM and cybersecurity, and how can organizations better support them?
Yeah. Well, I think we're really living in very interesting times right now. There has been a recent presidential executive order that is cutting DEI programs, certainly in universities and corporations and the government. There's websites that are pulling the word women or transgender or, you know, just taking away programs and things like that. So, growing up and entering the workforce during these times certainly is challenging. So whatever companies have done in the past to level the playing field, right? My worry is that there's an overcorrection. And in the quest to do DE&I the right way, so there's really truly actionable results, which I believe many companies already have done organizationally. We're not using DEI for quotas. We're not using it, as an only way to recruit people. I think that the rhetoric around that is almost quite frankly absurd. Can we do better? I think we can. So I think what companies can do is they can continue to have employee resource groups, right? They continue to ensure that all women are given stretch opportunities and equal access to training. They can support organizations like the Executive Women's Forum, who does not just provide programs for women, but provides programs for men, that works with the ISACs, that works with the government, that works with, universities like yours. So I think companies have to be very aware of not overcorrecting. And I think it is up to you, everyone listening to this, to take a stand. You're never too young to have a voice, and you're never too early on into your career to make a difference. Your voice matters, and using that voice right now is more important than ever before. So speaking up in a meeting when a woman gets, talked over it, and say, oh, thanks, John, for reiterating what Dani just said before, for being the person in the room when the other woman isn't the room and advocating for her, finding the ways to harness other people in your company, both men and women, not just to be mentors, but to be sponsors. And what I mean by a sponsor is a mentor is somebody that kind of helps you with the day-to-day tasks, right? That you could ask questions and that maybe, you look up to because of their job, because of who they are as a person, whatever. That person could be a mentor to you. But a sponsor is somebody who will actually use their political capital within their company right, to help you to move forward. So it's important for you to have sponsors. And especially if you're a woman in STEM, I mean, it would be great if your sponsor is a woman, and it doesn't have to be. A lot of the executives that hold technology roles are, in fact, men. So you have to develop those relationships with the men and the women in your companies, outside your companies, to sponsor you, to be that voice when they're writing on the whiteboard all the names of the people that should be considered for promotion. You need one of those executives in the room to know who you are and to say, hey, how come Dani's name isn't on the list, right? So you need to develop those relationships. I would say to you, sit down with a piece of paper and make some concentric circles of who's your closest network of people, whether they're friends, family, or coworkers, people that you have classes with, people that you're working with, and then keep extending that. And if everybody in that list looks like you, right? If they come from the same, you know, geography, if they have similar roles, if they're the same gender, anything that's really homogeneous, then look at that hard and recognize where you need to expand. Is everybody part of STEM? Is everybody a technologist? If so, you need to start to figure out how to meet more people. And I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. Being a part of the Executive Women's Forum is one of the greatest ways to develop friendships and to develop mentorships from women that are across the globe and across every industry and really just about every role in technology, governance, risk, compliance, privacy, law. It's a really wonderful place to find girlfriends, and to build relationships that'll last you for your lifetime.
Indeed, at the conference last year, I made so many wonderful friends and strengthened so many bonds, like the ones I mentioned, like Tylisa, Sari, Sarah, so many countless others. And it was just a fun time, including the dancing. Oh my goodness. Not only was it about professional development, but it was really about interpersonal connections as well. So thank you for hosting a wonderful conference.
Our pleasure. It's one of the greatest joys that I have is kind of before I come on stage to do the keynote, just to kind of linger in the back of the room and watch everybody hugging and laughing and sharing, the joy of being together again. And then when I walk down the halls and I overhear people talking to each other or coming up to me and really giving heartfelt stories about how the Executive Women's Forum has changed them personally and professionally, how it's kept them in the field, how it's helped them to get promoted or get a new job. It's really it's a beautiful thing.
Based on your executive experience, what skills and mindsets do you think are essential for women aiming for leadership roles in cybersecurity?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, when we say a leadership role, I think I think everyone here should consider themselves a leader, right? Regardless of whether you're in school or whether you're a staff or an analyst or a programmer or whatever. You're a leader of your life. You might be a leader in your community, right? You may be a leader within your organization or an association. You could be a leader on a project that you're on. So I think first and foremost, we're all leaders. We may be at different points of that leadership, but I think that's really important to remember. And I think that is a mindset, right? Is that I'm a leader today, and every action I take, I can make a difference. So I think starting to have that self-talk. I mean, I always told my daughters, I have three remarkable, incredible daughters. And when they were growing up, I always said to them, the greatest story you'll ever tell is the story you tell to yourself about yourself, right? So if you're listening, what's the story that you're telling yourself? Are you telling yourself that you're confident? Are you telling yourself that you can take risks? Are you telling yourself that you're resilient? That no matter what the outcome is, you can bounce back, you can win, you can get on top of things. And I said win. Man, sometimes women, we don't want to be competitive, or we worry about winning or asking for what we want. The hell with that. The only way you're going to get what you want is to be competitive, is to win, is to want to succeed, and to let other people know that you want to succeed, and let other people know the great work that you've done or research that you've done to get you where you are. So the mindset is to have that confidence in yourself and tell yourself a confident story. Tell yourself a positive story. And then be your authentic self. And I know that's an expression I think is like overused, but if you're not true to yourself, if you're incredibly introverted and somehow you think you have to be, an extrovert like me to succeed, it's not going to work for you. It's not going to come across authentic. I know many women who are introverted who are incredibly successful, right? So be true to your strengths, because when you're true to yourself and you follow what it is that you're passionate most about, that's the place that you're going to succeed the most, because work is going to seem a lot less like work, and you're going to be willing to put in the hours, or you're going to be willing to go the extra mile, or you're going to be willing to take that risk or take that chance because you actually have a vested interest in the result, and you want to do good and you want to do more. So you'll go out on that limb. You'll take that job that's a stretch, right? And that's a mindset too. So many studies are done where women apply for jobs when they have, 90% of the credentials, where men will do it with 40% or less. Well, what are you afraid of? Take the job, take the risks, take the course, apply for, whatever research grants that you might be working on. You've got nothing to lose. If you're early in your career or you're still in school, you will never have a time in your life that you have lesser responsibilities. Now is the time to take a chance. Now is the time to push yourself. Now is the time to do the hard things, because life, as you get older, in a lot of ways, just gets more complicated and harder. And you get married, or you have children, or you have elderly parents, or you have a mortgage payment and you have a car payment, and all of these things make it a little less flexible. So when you're younger, although it may seem like you're pushing yourself, man, now is the time. Now is the time to push. And if you push hard now and you get used to, striving for things and winning and losing sometimes and picking yourself back up when you fail, and having these group of women that'll give you that swift kick in the ass when you need it, or that will throw their arms around you and hug you when you need it, you're on the right track and you're going to do great. Believe in yourself. That's the mindset that you have to have. Believe that you could accomplish anything that you set your mind to, and you will, because there's nothing that can keep you down. There's nothing that can step in your way, if you really, really want to achieve great things.
Wow, what an inspiring message, Joyce. Thank you so much for sharing that nuggets of knowledge with our viewers, and I really appreciate your support of women, especially us young women at the CMU INI. And actually, I've been promoting the EWF with my besties, and I even got one of them to join. Her name's Vaishnavi, and she was able to join, and I will convince more of my friends. And also to the viewers out there, do yourself a big favor and join the EWF. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Joyce,
Well,
again.
thank you
And
so much.
yeah,
All
thank
right. Best of luck to you all. Thank you for being with me today.